Let's welcome in Pennsylvania Congressman Guy Reschenthaler to talk more about these tax cuts. Great to see you again, Guy. You don't have to say thanks for calling you Guy. We got that established here. I'd rather spend that time talking to you about the taxes, the tax hikes that are actually in this plan. I mean, was it opposite day in New Jersey yesterday? And it doesn't matter if you whisper it or you scream it, no matter how many times you say it. This isn't a tax cut.
I don't know where he was taught or where he was instructed to lean forward and whisper whenever he's trying to get a point across. It's so disingenuous. And if you look at the tax issue, the worst tax for the working and middle class right now is inflation. Everyone's paying more for everything from groceries to gasoline to even electricity in their houses. That's the real hidden tax. And he can say that he's only going to tax the wealthy, that those that make under $400,000 are not taxed, that they're only going to go after billionaires. Just as Emerald and you were just talking about before I came on, that is just a starting place. And as we know, taxes always will get expanded. They will always get brought down to the lower classes when the government needs new revenue. So any tax is a threat to the working and middle class. It's also problematic that they want to raise the corporate income tax, because a lot of people say, hey, I don't own a corporation, or let the corporations pay. Don't kid yourself. When the corporate income tax increases, that amount is then passed on to consumers. So you will, in essence, as a consumer, be paying that tax, and you'll be paying for the inflation again. So like, if Joe Biden wants to get this transportation infrastructure plan done, there's an easy way to do it. It's focused on roads, bridges, airports, locks and dams, rural broadband, a very skinny package. Instead, this transportation infrastructure plan has taxes on gasoline on it. It's been tied to this liberal spending spree that Bernie Sanders architected that. That's what this is tied to. The American people are not willing to move this far left. Neither is the Republican Party. So Joe Biden has the opportunity to pass a transportation infrastructure package if he would just focus on true infrastructure, not, as they are calling it, human infrastructure.
Right. I think most Americans would agree we need better roads and bridges and better electrical grid in this country. When it comes to the preschool for 3-year-olds, when we see what's happening in America's schools, probably a lot of Americans aren't ready for that type of investment yet. There was, though, I think, a moment of clarity for the president yesterday when he was at that elementary school. Here's what he told the kids about dealing with the press.
You know, when you're president, see all these people here? They're with you all the time. They get to ask you all kinds of questions, and you try to figure out how you can avoid answering them sometimes.
I'd laugh too if it weren't so sad, Guy, because this guy never answers any questions, and we have a lot of questions. Instead, they are just pushing these ridiculous proposals. He doesn't face the press. And, the other thing, too, that's astounding is that the press corps gets mad for like a day, and then they forget all about it, and then they're back to their usual bootlicking selves.
You're right. And, the reason I was laughing was not because the joke was so funny. It's the hypocrisy that's hysterical.
Right.
If President Trump had made a comment like that, the press would be running around saying the president has, quote unquote, declared war on the press. And I know that because they did it all the time during the Trump presidency. Additionally, there's hypocrisy because Joe Biden promised that he was going to be the most transparent president in history. This is a guy that delayed, I can't remember the exact amount of days, but it was one of the longest periods of time for a new president in recent history not to do a press conference. This is a guy that gets ushered off the stage. Yes.
The Media Research Center has been tracking this. No, I'm not. I just wanted to jump in here because the Media Research Center has been tracking this. We reported this last week. President Trump did 5 times the number of media availabilities, whether it was on the rope line or talking to the press as he headed out to Marine One, than President Biden has done thus far. Ronald Reagan had done twice as many, and he was shot in the chest. I mean, Joe Biden clearly avoids the press, and then he jokes about it with little kids, like we don't have a right to get answers to these questions.
And here's the underlying cause of that and what's doing it. Ronald Reagan, much like Kevin McCarthy, says when you're a conservative, when you're bringing economic prosperity to people, when you're fighting for their freedoms and liberties, you should be happy. You should be wanting to go out and talk to people about your agenda. Joe Biden does not have that same philosophy because his agenda is not popular with the American people. This is a guy that ridiculed us when he was joking about Republicans caring about freedom. This is a guy that, as you see, has made numerous jokes about not taking questions from the press. He's somebody that's trying to pass an agenda that's far too left for the American people. So, of course, he's going to dodge the press. And there's history for it with Joe Biden. Remember, this is a guy that during the entire presidential campaign literally hid in his house rather than campaigning. It was President Trump, it was the Republicans that were out talking to people. So, of course, he feels emboldened that he does not need to speak to the American people, that he does not need to take questions from the press, because he has this delusion that the American people are lined up with him in this far left agenda, and he can't take the questions that show that there's division between what Joe Biden thinks the American people want and what the American people actually will tolerate. And just to close this loop real fast, John, this delusion is going to come to a crashing halt when Youngkin beats McAuliffe next week in Virginia. That's going to send shivers down the spines of Democrats because they're going to wake up to the fact that they don't have a mandate to move this country far to the left.
Yeah, well, Guy, Bill O'Reilly predicted last night on Eric Bolling's show, I guess yesterday afternoon, that Glenn Youngkin will in fact win. So Bill O'Reilly says it's true. It must be true. Great to see you, Guy, as always.
You
see
too,
you around
John.
town.